Donna from Evoca, and in this video we're going to go over the finalization of our textures, so making sure that they're engine ready. So once we've finished and we're happy with the textures that we've created, we need to make sure that the texture sizes are what are specified for our character. So when we created our texture, we've created it at double the sizes of the final texture. So since our head texture was going to be 1024, the PSD file is 2046. So we need to go through on each of the TGAs and make sure that they're actually the right size. So you can see here my body texture is 4096 and that's too large, so we need to make sure that it adheres to the 2048 that it is meant to be. So I'm using bicubic sharper for the resample to make sure everything is nice and clear when it's been reduced. So once that's done, I can just hit save and we're good to go. So doing these on each of the TGAs for our character. So again, with the normal map, shrinking that down again to make sure that it adheres to our texture limit, our texture size limit. Now we create them larger than the original. Sometimes it's easier to work with depending on the size of the texture. If it's a rather small texture, if you're only making a 512, it can be hard to get the detail in there. So we make it a little bit larger. It also helps if perhaps sometimes marketing will come to you if you're in an industry, in a job situation, they'll ask you for a few high-res renders for marketing purposes. So to have the larger texture size ready and ready to go, it always helps sell the image. Sell the character in the game a little bit better as well. So just going through each one of my body textures and making sure that they're all 2048 and making sure that all my head textures are 1024. So all the TGAs, leaving the PSD file at the double size but only changing the TGAs. Now that that's done, I've had a chance to have a look at her in game, and I've noticed that there are a few things that have actually gone off concept. So the most obvious being her chest size. So in the concept, she's actually quite smaller. So I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to go back in and merge in just one of the high-res body files from before. So I'm just going to grab the one file. I'm not going to grab all of these. I'm just going to grab the high-res one, just to use as a guide to see how far off. So you can see that she's actually gone quite far off her chest size there. So now I'm going to grab the polygons of her chest. I'm just using the grow to expand the selection there, so just hitting a couple and then hitting grow to expand the selection. So yeah, she's become a little bit too large. She's looking a little bit unbalanced. So once I have the selection that I want, now this is obviously an old version of the file, so she is sitting a bit lower because she hasn't got her boots on, but I can still use it as a guide. I've just applied a push modifier, and I'm going to use that to bring in the chest. So instead of inflating it this time, I'm bringing it down. So I'm just raising this up a little bit too, just to to help me get the idea of the proper breast size here. So just putting the push value in a negative to bring it back down. So there are some areas that I'm going to need to tweak after I've made this change, particularly around the bottom there where the vest is starting to clip through. Don't worry about the head, that's just a viewport quirk at the moment. So the textures are still applied fine, it's just the viewport being a bit funny. So I might actually try to do this. So I've undone that because I want to see if I can limit the amount of changes that I need to do. So I've converted my poly selection, I've undone and deleted my push modifier, and keeping the poly selection, I've converted it to vertices, and applied a soft selection, so it basically puts kind of a gradient on how much each of these vertices will be affected by the push modifier. So that looks a little bit better. So you can see the red ones will be more affected than the darker blue ones, and hopefully this will mean that there'll be less clipping that I'll have to fix with the vest area. So I'm just getting a value in the soft selection that I like, and then applying the push modifier again and bringing that back down. So there we go. You can see how the red vertices are being affected the most by the push modifier compared to the darker blues and the lighter blues. So you can see if I turn the push on and off how that's affecting the model and how it looks overall. So yeah, it definitely looks better with the smaller chest size. She doesn't look as unbalanced. Okay, when I'm happy with that, I'll collapse it and I'll tweak the vertices back into place, so making sure that nothing is clipping through. Again, because these are underneath and behind the vest, I don't really need to worry about how it's affecting the texture. I just want to pay attention to the texture that is seen. Because moving the vertices around will affect your UV layout. You may see some stretching occur. If this is the case, I have extra vertices here, which is not good. I don't know how that's happened, so I can just select all of those and hit remove. I must have hit shift by accident and cloned my vertices there. So now just going back through and making sure that each of these vertices are back in the position that they should be in. You can see that it does affect the texture a little bit. So you want to make sure that if you're doing major adjustments, you'll need to go in and tweak your UV layout as well. So this sort of thing does happen once we see something in game, or if you're in a studio, if your art director sees it or your lead artist sees it and there's something in there that doesn't match style or doesn't match the character, the concept, or indeed if something in the concept has changed entirely, you will have to go in and you will change it. Sometimes it can be minor tweaks like this, where you don't have to do a lot of extra modeling to fix it. Sometimes it's a major tweak and there's a lot of redoing textures as well as redoing the sculpt or redoing a lot of fiddly little things that need to be replaced because a key concept of the character has changed. So now I'm just going in here and checking my UVs and making sure that nothing needs to be moved and adjusted. Everything seems to be lying in the right spot, so I'm just checking, and I'm going through and seeing, you know, how the model overall is looking. So just a final weld here. But yeah, like I was saying, changes are quite prevalent whenever you're in a studio. So you can't be too precious about your work. I mean, you need to take, obviously, pride in what you're doing, but you are being paid to do something as well. So you need to understand that you will have to do changes. So it can come in handy to develop a bit of a thick skin, because critique is part of the industry. But there we go. She is now game ready, and she fits the concept a little bit more as well. She looks a little bit more in proportion, so she isn't too top heavy. But there we go. One last reset of the X forms, and Selena is complete. One last thing I'm going to do before I actually wrap up on this character is I'm going to save this and close it and open up a new scene and merge it in. So just making sure that none of the junk is in my scene anymore, and it's a nice clean scene. So just merging the character, and there we go. And turn off the white box model and freeze that, and she's good to go. So saving it as my final mesh.